Croke, we talked so much about the spillover, and today Dean's going to share with you a ton of information about the spillover just from Looming rail strike and semiconductor issue.
Let's go.
To the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
I love that fact that we all got names. We got internet guy Jeff, we got just JIT Ryan, just in time Ryan, and then we got the mad scientist, the data Dean, and then we got Dan.
So I was gonna say no.
No, you're not getting off that easy.
Yeah, you're not getting off that easy, no. Mr. Talk a lot. Yeah, Sir Talk a lot. There we go.
Sir Talk a lot. There you
Sir
go.
Talk a lot.
It's funny. We have friends who he has a name for his wife called Costco Debbie because she loses her mind at Costco, and he always brings it up. And it's so hilarious that my wife and I started giving each other names for where we are.
Right.
Yeah, so it's hilarious. Do you guys have did you guys ever have like a nickname in high school?
Yeah, I was just going to say mine was Have a Chat, and which is kind of unusual because I'm an introvert and I don't talk a lot other than when I'm on your show. I'm generally pretty quiet.
Me.
Yeah, but
sure, right.
We're playing.
Yeah,
okay. I'm playing grade cricket one day. This is like 1978, right? So I'm just out of high school and I'm in first slip. So if you know cricket, like first slip is next to the wicket keeper, and that's where the fastest balls come at you, and the guy nicks it off his bat. And the balls come at you at about 100 miles an hour. So you got to have pretty good reaction time. Anyway, I'm in first slip, and I was talking to the second slip next to me, and the ball came at me and hit me in the head.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I ended up catching it. It deflected off my melon, and I dived and caught it. But from that day on, they called me Have a Chat because I was
Because you were chatting. Your
Who
voice
is
went
it?
out again, Dean.
Can't hear you. Have a chat.
Have a chat. Yeah.
Would like to.
He
pulled the Jeff special. He pulled the for there. He'll be back on though. But what was for me my nickname in high school? This was before the singer Pitbull. Like I was actually called Pitbull because I played on the basketball team. I played on the soccer team. I was always kind of that like go-getter and kind of go after it. So when Pitbull started coming doing music, I was like, should I get a new nickname, right? So that was mine. No, it's called Pitbull.
You should have sued him because you had it first. Right?
Mr. Worldwide, like you.
Yeah. Dude, you missed an opportunity there, man. You know what I'm saying? Jeff, what about you?
The Hot Rod King. I had many cars in high school when I was growing up, and I owned the streets, so to speak.
Oh,
Then I got married and I sold everything. But
right.
Mine was Buddy.
Buddy.
Okay.
I thought it was Pal.
No, it was Buddy because every time I forgot somebody's name, I'd be like, "Hey, buddy." So if all my friends were just like, "Hey, buddy," and because I was horrible with names in high school. I'd meet somebody like 10 times with, "Hey, buddy," because it's easy when you forget. You just hey. So if I ever call you buddy, probably means I forgot your name. Sorry.
Okay, buddy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Dean, you cut out before you finish that story. I really want to hear the end of it.
Well, so they just got called Have a Chat because every time I had a propensity to talk in the first slip position, not because I wanted to talk, because I was nervous. Because when a fast bowler comes in and bowls, at high speed, they literally are bowling at 100 miles an hour. When it comes off the bat, it seems to accelerate at you. So you have a fraction of a section to react and dive and catch it. Sometimes you've got to dive forward, which means the ball can crush your fingernails and split your fingers open. So if anybody's played cricket, you'll know that anywhere in the slips where you catch balls, you've got to end up with a lot of injuries. So I was always afraid of getting hurt more than anything as a young kid. So that was Have a Chat stuck. Okay, pal.
So I'm going to open myself up to a little criticism here. So in cricket, you don't wear gloves, right? Like you don't have like a baseball mitt or anything.
Like it's a cork
As a
ball,
fit-
so it's a hard ball. It's harder than a
Yeah.
baseball. So there's no
Yeah.
gloves. Only the wicket keeper has
Behind the
gloves, but
stumps.
he's
Yeah.
behind the stumps. So he's basically comparing it to like the catcher. So like
Okay.
that. It's a hard ball, man. I played. Gina actually played last night. I scored
Oh.
36 over. We won 120 over 7. So
Wow, good for you.
yeah, cricket's it's a fun sport. You guys should get into it if you guys haven't been before.
I miss
So,
it.
but you're catching 100-mile-an-hour ball.
Yeah,
with
I was
your
just
bare
about to
hand.
say.
You know
No,
what's
no,
funny is when
Man, is this
In the
big?
air.
you catch it in the air. I mean, that's how you get the guy out. Is you catch it on the full. I always laugh when they talk about someone on baseball. Someone bare hands a ball, and I think you're kidding.
Yeah,
He bare
kidding
hands a
me.
ball. He's barehanded a ball bouncing on the grass, and I think, God, I've got no idea what barehanding a cricket ball really is. So it's a tough
I
sport.
couldn't even imagine.
It's slow,
I
but
mean,
it's brutal.
I've caught something
I
at like
bet.
2 kilometers an hour, and it gives me a bruise right
Yeah.
here. I couldn't imagine
Oh,
100 miles
right
an
in
hour.
the
Like
palm
that.
of the hand.
Yeah.
Even like your
Yeah.
cricket
With
bat.
the
Like,
catcher's
if I got my
glove on
cricket
it.
bat right now, you guys would see all the indents, and we play
Yeah.
with like a hard tennis ball, and like because
Yeah.
we don't play
Yeah.
with the cork ball indoor because it's a soccer field, right? We'll screw it up, but yeah, man,
Yeah.
cricket's it's
Yeah.
a tough sport.
It's worse when
That's
you
a
get hit in
heavy-duty
the
sport.
Yeah.
where
Now I understand why
Yeah.
players put their cigarettes out in the palm of their
So,
hand.
Dean, you don't wear a jock?
Yeah.
what's that?
You don't wear a jock?
Whoa.
Well,
Okay,
no, you
let's-
do. You have what they call a box, a protector, but still, when you get hit there at 100
box.
miles an hour, you still feel it.
I bet. Yeah.
You're taking some days off, you know.
Well, you need
So
a
listen,
box.
this is the show for today, guys. It's been great.
Well, you need
I'll
a-
see you guys
yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah, you need a box for your balls, right? I mean, come on.
Yep,
Seriously.
yep. As we'd
right.
say using rhyming slang, Jats crackers.
How far off the
Day-to-day
rails have we
Wednesday.
gone? Oh
Welcome
my
to the
gosh,
show.
did you guys just hear that transition?
Well, this
Hey,
train went off the rails.
Yeah. You know what I'm picturing right now is that picture of Ron Burgundy where he's got that beer in his hand. He goes, "Well, that escalated quickly," right? That meme that always was going around. So let's
How
try
do
to
we
bring this
recover?
back on the rails here
Yeah.
and recover this a little bit, Dean.
All right.
We saw
Yeah.
a actual shift into the truckload market from. Geez, that just went
did.
from really funny to super serious instantly.
Super
Did you guys
serious.
feel that vibe
Yeah,
change?
yeah.
I did.
Wow.
This is like outtakes of sales chatter.
We're live, guys. We're live.
Yeah.
Did we
Really?
actually
So-
push the button?
Yeah, great show. A
No.
great article by Lorianne LaRocco last week in CNBC. I don't know if you saw it. She writes a really good piece on shipping and imports. And there's a piece that got my attention because in September, when the threat of the last rail strike came along, we didn't see much movement over to truckload because there was plenty of capacity. And it absorbed, we had some shippers say, about a week out, we started shipping all of our soft drinks and food and bev and hazmat and time sensitive stuff over to truckload. And their comment was, we didn't need the spot market because there was plenty of contract capacity to absorb it. So fast forward to last week when there was the threat of the rail strike. What was the day it cut off? I forget the exact date. Anyway, great story in CNBC. And it talked about an interview with DHL Forwarding where they said that technology companies were among their clients moving shipments to road to avoid the threat of the strike. And they were talking about specifically technology-related items, including semiconductor chips critical to the high-tech sector and auto industry.
Yep.
And so if you think that through, I thought that was a very interesting thing. And I thought, okay, so that means that this week, so as in the data that I looked at Sunday for last week's truckload spot market activity, we should see some volume movement out of Los Angeles. Even though there's plenty of capacity, right? There's plenty of truckload capacity. And what we saw, and I'll just quote you some data points. What I did is I went in and looked at 10 intermodal ramp markets, right? So, and I'll preface it by saying a lot of people ask what's a ramp market. For those that don't know, it's in the old days when you used to back a truck and a trailer up onto a ramp, onto a train. That's why it's called a ramp. Historically, that's how they used to move circus cargo and things like that. That was before containers and cranes. So in the ramp, trailer and flat car. So now you've got ramp markets. So let's look at big intermodal hubs or ramp markets like Joliet, Chicago, Columbus, Indianapolis, Harrisburg, Atlanta, Memphis, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Kansas City. So
Okay.
if you look at just those top 10, and that's not necessarily by volume, I just look at them based on where I see a lot of ramp activity and a lot of dray carriers taking containers to customers. So when I looked at that, the volume of truckload posts in the spot market were up 92% week over week last week in those top 10 ramp markets. Now, first thing you'll say is, well, but that's a catch-up week. Post-Thanksgiving is always a catch-up week. It's the first 5-day week after the short 3-day week before Thanksgiving. Yeah. So your week-over-week comps are always skewed. So I thought, okay, this was the first post-Thanksgiving catch-up week we've had with a rail strike threat, right? So I went back and looked at prior years, and the prior years showed that the rate of increase in all of those ramp markets was about half that. Was in the 45 to 50% week over week change. So I thought, okay, that's interesting because that tells me something happened in the ramp markets where shippers who had freight in the works pulled it off the rails, possibly transloaded or drayed it longer distances. And the spot market was obviously a vehicle to do that. When I dug into some of the other markets like Los Angeles, right, where a lot of the semiconductor chips came into to follow on the story of CNBC, Los Angeles had the highest week over week change as a ramp market, 117% up, Kansas City up 114%. So all of those ramp markets saw a lot of activity. So to double check my theory, and again, it's a theory, but the data kind of played out nicely because one of the lanes that we talk about a lot is Los Angeles, Chicago, where about 30% of intermodal move literally across that. It's a 2,000-mile haul. Truckload competes very heavily on that lane, so it's a good benchmark lane to see how volume's moving for shippers between road and rail. On that particular lane, Los Angeles, Chicago, last week, the volume of loads moving increased 47% week over week after dropping for the prior 3 weeks. So that this is loads moving, not loads posted, right? Because loads posted are kind of amplified, but loads moving is a genuine data point that shows that's how many truckloads move. So it went up, which again confirms to me that truckload spot market brokers were, called upon to help move some of that urgent rail freight that was moving over to truckload. So the third thing I did is said, okay, well, how did rates move? So if volume's going up, did capacity have a commensurate surge? And the answer was no, because there was plenty of capacity. Spot rates on that lane. So let's pull the aperture back. In the total Los Angeles market for all outbound loads, they dropped 2 cents a mile last week to $1.75, excluding diesel. Right. So the whole market capacity loosened, rates down. But on that one lane, where is it? Let me quickly find it. Rates went up about. Rates increased to $1.42 a mile. So increased slightly overall. Yeah, they went up 2 cents a mile to $1.42, Los Angeles, Chicago. So on that lane where, truckload volume competes with rail, we heard anecdotally they were pulling a lot of rail volume off to move, semiconductor chips, et cetera, to the Midwest. Rates on that lane went up a few pennies. So for the rates to go up on a lane a few pennies against the whole market that's coming down, it kind of tells you the capacity was tighter on that lane. And that was sort of the inference that we made. So several data points that I thought were very interesting last week in a market where capacity has been loosening, the truckload market generally has been loosening, a little bit of activity. So again, it was a boost, even though it didn't eventuate, the threat provided a much needed boost to carriers. And then, of course, we've just had diesel drop 17 cents a gallon this week, under $4 for the first time, under $5 for the first time since October the 3rd. And what happens with spot rates? The spot rates tend to go down when diesel goes up by the rates it's been going up. When diesel comes down like it is, I expect line haul rates to start to trend upwards again, and that's good for truckload carriers. But they always do trend up between now and Christmas anyway, right? So we're going to see spot rates start to increase, I think, between now and Christmas. But this was a much needed boost for carriers last week. The threat of the strike was a boost. But guys, I'd love your opinion on this. I don't think it's over, even though they've been forced. There's been forced legislation to not strike. So 2 years of back pay, 24% increase, 2 years of back pay to collect.
Sick time.
For those that were forced to accept a package they rejected, right? They're being forced to accept it. How happy are you? How motivated are you? Like this is a question I've got. Does service levels suffer? Do you see what happened in 2016 with the port strike? Do you see work stoppages, go slows? Do you see like 2 weeks ago where they locked out cranes in Oakland and shut down the port for a day? You know, what are
did you read the Wall Street Journal report that they're around 23% short-staffed railroad across America?
Right.
And they're saying, so even though the strike is like, you know, they've settled it, this Wall Street Journal report said like, don't expect things to get any better. Actually expect them to get worse, because they don't have people to drive the trains. They don't have people to load, to secure. Like they're short-staffed everywhere in the rail market. And I have a question for you, Dean, because I mean, I know 2 cents to go up in a market like we're facing right now is a pretty good increase. But when you add that amount of volume from the rail move to truckload, we're talking tens of thousands of truckloads.
That would crush
only
the
2 cents.
But
I would think it would go up more, which means that there's a massive amount of capacity in the market, like a massive amount. I would expect it to go up like 20, 30 cents when you move that type of volume to truckload.
Well, this was only on one lane, right? In one market that rates went up. I mean, rates nationally went up 3 cents a mile last week for dry van. So there is a little bit of peak season volume coming into the market. You've got to factor that in also, Dan. This is sort of the first week of December. I think there's a lot of people looking to do a lot of store replenishments after the sales. You know, Christina's lane of the day is, you know, talking about some of that volume moving into Allentown, Pennsylvania market. And right on cue, internet
guy's coming back. Internet guy's coming back.
I shouldn't talk. My microphone blows today. It's going to trash me for sure.
Hey, Dean, I got a quick question for you. You know, you talked about intermodal and catch-up time with the holidays and everything.
Yep.
You know, you would think with that kind of volume increase, you talked about 108, 114% increase. I wonder what the dwell time looked like on these containers sitting at the warehouses, because I would think logically that with that kind of influx, people were catching up, like you said, and were moving their freight faster. It's too bad that they can't do it consistently all the time to cut down that dwell, because remember, way back, we had that problem with capacity and containers and chassis and everything, because warehouses were keeping the chassis and the containers for a long period of time to use it as an access warehouse, to help them out. I'm just curious what that dwell time would look like now compared to back then. I think that would
I don't know. Yeah, you know, I think that's worth chasing down. I don't have the data. And Larry Gross would be a guy that would be writing about that. I think it's worth checking on. Maybe we can come back on that next week, because logic would tell you that the velocity of containers through the port has increased as the volumes have dropped right off.
And then dwell time would decrease, not increase.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah, because you're speeding up. They're not sitting at the dock for a long period of time.
Got it.
But with that volume of freight moving to truckload, I bet you if you were one of the first ones off, you were fast. But as you come off, and these warehouses have their typical daily loading deliveries, you know, all their P&D, that everything that happened daily. Now you add, you know, 200 containers that need to be offloaded and loaded on trucks. That dwell time probably got a lot bigger or larger, greater by the end of the week.
And the detention, would also increase too, if you think about it, right? So they're pushing the product out the door. They have limited amount of doors. So what took maybe a half an hour, 45, maybe an hour to load a truck, I bet you went to 2, maybe 2.5, if not 3 hours to do that, because they were just waiting for that product to switch from the rail over to the truck. Trucks lining up at the door. I'm pretty sure that would have increased. So I'd like to see those numbers too.
How it might have played out, you know, big importers, freight forwarders like Kuehne Nagel and DHL Freight Forwarding. I suspect a lot of that container volume might have been already unloaded in warehouses. Again, I don't know if they transport it in the international boxes they come in, like a 40-foot, and transload to a 53-foot intermodal box at their warehouse. So so it may have already been transloaded out of an international box in their warehouse, and then rather than go on the rail, it just got loaded into a 53-foot van.
Yeah.
That's sort of how I would have done it if I was in that market. And I look at big international logistics companies like in Atlanta, just near the Atlanta airport. That's kind of what they do. A lot of it gets drayed in there. They dray it in from Savannah, and then it'll go into the warehouse, and then it'll go out, either on the intermodal network or on the truckload network out of Atlanta.
Yep.
So that's may have been what happened. But definitely there's a lot of volume that's fallen away on the West Coast, Jeff. There's a substantial amount of volume. It's almost like an implosion in rates, and talks of some ocean line carriers struggling. And so things have, in the space of a year, haven't things changed dramatically in nearly every freight market, right? There's been such a change. We've gone from, it's like a real boom and bust type scenario. It's an incredible whiplash effect. But seasonality, we talked a bit about it last week. Seasonality did come back into the market this week again. So I see the truckload market struggling to sort of gravitate back to how it would normally behave. That said, I think the hangover effect of all of this inventory that was pulled forward earlier will dampen demand in the quiet season in the first quarter next year even more. Again, you've got high inflation, even though it's starting to slow down. The rate of increase is slowing. You've got a lot of consumer spending that's going on now on heavily discounted items. Again, I just feel like demand will sort of cool off like it always does, but maybe a little bit more so next year. And that's where I worry about how carriers survive first quarter. Diesel needs to come down a fair bit to give them a little bit of breathing space. EIA have got it forecasted about $4.30 by the middle of the year. So at $4.97, 8 something, we're heading in that direction. But we've still, one of the main reasons that Opus said this week, one of the main reasons prices are coming down is that inventories have increased, and that we've got much warmer weather here in the Northeast heading into winter, which has it's decreased the demand, slightly.
Yeah. So, and as soon as we get a cold spell, it's
right.
We're back to the story, because the consumption is going to go way up, right? So
yeah,
it's kind of like a flip of a coin at this point. Like we're what?
Yep.
December 7th now, I think, or something. What are we? We're December 7th.
7/12.
Like
12/7.
It's normally if we don't have snow, it's cold,
right.
But like it's supposed to be 9 degrees here today or something. That's
right.
Crazy.
So there was 60 degrees this morning here. 60.
Wow. Oh yeah. You're in New Jersey, just south of me.
Yeah.
Hey, the other data point that's maybe just worth talking about is we're still seeing the refrigerated market kind of went down again last week in terms of line haul spot rates. It's not a healthy market right now. Normally they'd be a little bit busier this time of the year with all of the food related items that need to be moved into consumer markets. But some of the markets are still showing a bit of life, like Twin Falls, Idaho, rates up 29 cents a mile, like only $1.72, right? So not spectacular. Phoenix out of Twin Falls up 11 cents. Twin Falls has got that massive yogurt factory up there, but just further north you've got a lot of produce. You've got a lot of Christmas trees, apples, pears, dry onions coming out of that market. It's still fall produce season up there technically. So there's some markets that are showing pockets. There's a lot of drywall and building products come out of Reno, Nevada. Some of the flatbed rates out of there are pretty good. The produce season's off by about 58% in terms of loads moved out of Florida. So it's off to a really slow start in Florida right now because of Hurricane Ian. Even though hurricane season's technically ended, it is interesting that we're seeing a December storm out in the Atlantic brewing up right now with, I think, a 50% probability of becoming a first name storm in December in decades. So it's not over yet, but technically it was over. But the impact of Hurricane Ian on Florida's produce season has definitely slowed things down. Why I say that is that, spot rates are kind of, tanking northbound out of Florida. Normally there'd be a lot more volume northbound out of Florida, and that would sort of prop up rates and put the floor under it. And I'm trying to find what the rates were for reefer carriers northbound, and it evades me right at the moment, but it's not very attractive for reefer carriers out of Florida right now. So there's still plenty of capacity in the market, and that's the thing. I had a carrier, an owner operator, trolling me on LinkedIn this week after me saying last week that, when we look at demand, it's up slightly compared to last year. Total demand, spot market and contract, right? So the number of tons, whether you look at the ATA truckload index or Jason Miller's ton mile index, volume's a little bit higher than this time last year. And they said, well, that can't be true. # fake news. And, so it was a real, it had that freedom fighter tinge to it. And # fake news. And it said, how can demand be up? Rates are tumbling. And I said, it's easy because volume can be up, but if the volume of trucks is up even more, you've got more supply than demand. So demand can be up, but if supply's up more, that's going to put downward pressure on rates. And of course, that gets missed, I think, by a lot of carriers because their aperture of their lens is too narrow. And that if they widen their aperture, they'd say, okay, there's a lot of trucks in the market right now. We've had a number of trucks enter the market in the last year. Clearly, we've still got those trucks hunting for smaller loads. We've got a weather channel.
I know we got the
weather channel going on at the bottom. It's like the ticker tape going on at the bottom.
Yeah, I know you're kind of doing different.
And now from Southern California, Lisa.
I love the fact that. Go Ryan. Go.
Yeah, even for Dean, like you've been talking about it because like I do a lot of reefer stuff, but within Canada itself, and the demand within the past 2 weeks it's been spiking through the roof. Some of our customers are kind of just sending emails, hey, we need help, and we do a lot of like finished goods. So like moving from like on Toronto to Calgary to BC specifically, we literally get emails saying, hey, we have 70 plus loads a week ready to go. And they're paying above market value. Normally back in the day, that's maybe like a $5,500, $6,000 market. They're paying well above that. And they're still having struggles to find that capacity. And, Dean, something that I've this week as well, I don't know if you've kind of heard rumblings about it, but Livingston, any customer who's using Livingston right now, they haven't been able to cross the border within 48 hours. And Livingston themselves doesn't have like a backup contingency plan. So a lot of truckers right now are stuck at the border if their customs broker is Livingston. They've got to a point there they've just switched off the phones, so you literally can't get somebody right now at Livingston. So
really?
Those are the two things that we're
That's not the first time. That's not the first time it's happened with Livingston. Livingston's been like a couple of times now this has happened. So they've actually switched the phones off, Ryan.
They switched the phones off. Yeah, I was actually talking to a carrier this morning about it, and I'm like, wow, this is
that's a service provider I want to do business.
And it's this crazy thing out. And Dean, I want to ask you, because you're talking about electronics as well, and the big news that I've kind of really been paying attention to is that Apple is moving their manufacturing plants out of China.
Right.
They're going to India and they're going to go to Vietnam because I think the CEO said that because all the COVID restrictions in China, they're not going to be able to meet demand for Apple iPhones for Christmas. Right. That's their peak season, right? Everybody wants that unwrapped. Do you see with any kind of like international shipments when they eventually do move over to India or Vietnam, or maybe it's just a marketing ploy to get China to be like, okay, no, we're not gonna lose this kind of business.
Yeah, you don't know how much of it's posturing, right? Given that we've just had a big meeting over there, and there's lots of sort of geopolitical unrest in the middle in Asia. I think there is a sense that the global manufacturing center of gravity is moving away from China. I don't think there's any question about that. We just heard there was a news story today about how semiconductor chips are going to be made in Arizona. I think a lot of people are de-risking their supply chains from a great story this week, and I can't remember the outlet, but it was talking about just in case versus just in time. So, we've moved from just in case to just in time with a lot more safety inventory. Jason Miller was talking about it. I think he makes a very good point that we're obviously carrying a lot more safety inventory just in case we have supply chain problems, but we're seeing a lot more resilience built into supply chains. And I think that was Apple's production. I think that report, I'm trying to figure out where they said Apple's newest is being made in India, right? And they say that could grow to about 25% by 2025. So China's clearly losing ground in a number of areas. But the area that I see, and we'll have a report out on this shortly, we're looking at all of our southern border markets. I just have a sense that we're going to see a lot more imports from Mexico, a lot more nearshoring, a lot more truckload volumes coming across into that commercial free zone along the border. There'll be a lot more intermodal. Of course, you've got a couple of big class ones running north-south. There's train lines that connect Mexico right through to Detroit. for auto parts. There's a lot of product moves between the two countries there. I just think there'll be a lot more volume, both dry van and reefer. And I say reefer because of the drought conditions in California. I think we're going to see a little bit more volume come through from Mexico to supplement what we're losing because of the drought conditions next year. So that's one where I'm watching, Ryan, is Mexico more than anything. I think they've got a lot of opportunity to produce a lot more electronics and accessories and apparel and clothing, all those things.
I think it's a great idea because you know what happened. You know, you talk about the semiconductors and the disaster that happened at Fukushima when everybody had their, that one tier one supplier right outside of Fukushima for the diodes and everything. And you know what happened after that. So I think it's a great idea to bring it, near shore and do it right here in the States in case something like that happens again. It's about time, really.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys look at just Apple, right? So if you look at the iPhone, 43 different countries on 6 continents produce pieces for the iPhone. So when you look at that supply chain, that's insane. One of these is 43 countries on 6 continents. Like that's a supply chain. That's an insane supply chain, and that's one of their products.
And that's just their iPhone, right?
It's an understatement.
Yeah.
The AirPods, the Apple Watch. I was just reading something here that they're looking to move like the AirPods and the Apple Watch to Vietnam and like have the iPhone made out of India, right? So you're looking at that, and we're not even talking about MacBooks or like anything like that. So it's crazy to think about. And just to your point, Dean, I kind of want to bring that up where you said where Mexico is a country to look at because we did an RFP for a company and they've had more Mexico lanes this year than compared to last year. I like to compare RFPs when I do with the same customer, and they're just a packaging company. They just do boxes. They do all the packaging for like Samsung TV boxes, things like that. And they've opened up more Mexico lanes for us to actually work on. So I definitely agree with that.
So the other story that was out this week, and I alluded to it a minute ago, but TSMC, which is Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, this was a story where President Biden announced the opening of it was, quote, the largest foreign investment in U.S. history and the largest in the state of Arizona. They're opening up a semiconductor chip factory in Phoenix. I guess it's Phoenix. It just says Arizona. So again, that's even though it's an overseas company, at least having the semiconductor chips here means potentially more outbound volume in what is essentially a backhaul market for dry van carriers. So I think that's a trend we're going to see a lot more of. I'd love to have more data at my disposal, but I think there's a lot more RFPs in the manufacturing process. I think that's what you call them, Jeff, going to companies in Mexico to build products as inputs to our broader manufacturing.
And if it's the same article, Dean, that you're reading, it was they did actually in the article say it will be more expensive. Like the fact is it will be more expensive. But when you look at time delays, when you look at issues, when you look at all of a sudden things stopping without us having any control over it, there's price and then there's cost.
Right.
And those are two completely separate things. And I think companies have realized the cost of a supply chain that can be broken in 2 seconds flat. And leading up to, not to COVID, but leading up to COVID, supply chains were broken. Like everything was great. But it's the instant shutdowns and all these things that we have no control over. And it's like, sorry, we're shut down by government. We can't put your stuff out for 3 months. It's like, and now you're stuck. And you're like, what do you do? And companies have lost tons of business. I know my buddy at Sherwin-Williams has said, like, we've lost tons of business because we can't even find dye for the paint colors.
It's all about sustainability.
Yeah, I've got a buddy that's in, he does all the floors, like at FedEx and stuff, paints all their floors and all the acrylic on the floors and stuff. He's moved away from Sherwin-Williams because they're like, their prices are sky high because they're scrambling to get this. And it's like, spend 3 times as much to get the same product in. Who's going to absorb that? Well, ultimately it's us, right? And the people that buy the product. And these supply chains, like listen, when you think about it, right? Companies like Apple, they're going to take matters into their own hands, like Home Depot, like Walmart, Home Depot, buying their own chips and doing their own thing.
Yeah, just from there. And like it's funny that you talk about those things, Em, because like you look at Sherwin-Williams, even like the pet food company that we use, like instead of they stopped doing like the tearaway plastic, so you actually got to cut it because they couldn't source that plastic anymore. I know talking to like the local pet food company over here as well, like they've switched to like just bags of kibble. Not even in the actual original packaging. It's just in a big bag, a big like clear bag, and here's your kibble. You obviously can see it by if you've used it. But I think like when you're looking at supply chain, like even coming back to COVID, a lot of customers they didn't go through this before, and like even for myself, right? Like I saw an influx of my freight go down, so I'm like, okay, what am I going to get into as a freight broker? Am I going to get into PPE? 3M is getting 10,000 calls a week. The people who are doing masks. Like it was just no way to kind of pivot it. To be smart enough with everybody kind of doing there. And we're kind of playing catch up. And Dean, I kind of want to get your opinion on too, because there's a lot of things coming out in Canada as well in terms of inflation. When we're looking at a family of 4 groceries are looking at close to being, I think it's like 16 or 17,000 that a family of 4 will spend next year alone. So when you look at like the lettuce shortages that are happening, and then you're talking about the greater kind of like demand, do you think that inflation is going to affect trucking next year, possibly again?
I think in the broader context it could, right? Because if it slows down consumer spending, like if it crimps what people are spending, A, on, like in terms of the mix of goods, and B, on the totality of what they spend, it has to impact volumes at some point. I think that's why, but you've also got the quiet season coming up and high inflation, right? So that's why I think that you might see softer demand even more so this year. But spending, I mean, that's been the goal of increasing interest rates, right, is to curb spending. So I just think it follows that we'll have a quiet year. I think one of the things that I remember reading this week from Jason Miller, and again, he's the official guru when it comes to data analytics in trucking. He said that we tend to make too much of consumer retail sales. He said it doesn't account for a lot of truckload. And I'm going to say it was something like 10% of total truckload volume. He always goes back to, domestic manufacturing in the US is about 58% of the ton miles in truckload in the US. So, and he always looks to the underlying manufacturing industrial sector as a good measure of what demand looks like. And those numbers look really good. They are up year over year. So he said a lot of the headline grabbing retail sales, consumer sales, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, inflation, consumer sentiment data points, he said it tends to miss the mark. And I'd agree with him completely, because it's not everything we haul. Remember, it's only like 1 or 2% of all volume moves more than 1,000 miles, right? 75% of truckload volume in the US moves under 100 miles, right? A lot of dump trucks, a lot of gasoline tankers, a lot of short haul guys. So when you think about how freight moves, it's a relatively small percentage that moves long haul. That we talk about in the Class 8 truckload sector that's sort of in DAT's wheelhouse, especially when you talk about imports that move long distances. So we're talking about sort of at the margins here about, how it'll affect truckload volume. I think the bigger issue, though, is cost, Ryan. I think that's the biggest thing that'll affect truckload operators is cost. High diesel prices, historically, they can't claw back wage increases over the last 2 years. I've got diesel operating costs at about $2.05 for a new entrant, about $1.70 for someone that's got equity and been through a few freight market cycles. They're historically high numbers compared to previous freight cycles, and that's not going down.
And then you got the shortage, and then you got the drought, and then you got half the product coming out, and then or 2/3 of the product coming out, and it all adds up to. I mean, I remember being at the grocery store, and I don't know if we've talked about this, but like 3 things of romaine lettuce, of fat boy romaine lettuce, that seem like they're half the size, is $10, where you used to get like 6 for $3.99. It's like, it's crazy. And I have a feeling it's going to turn a lot of families into eating unhealthy. Then we're gonna then what happens is, you were gonna go there, Ryan?
Yeah, that's what's gonna happen, right? Because like when they announced this week that a family of 4 is gonna cost them $17,000 a year for groceries. You think about that, right? And then people are, you're trying to, and you look at the cost of housing too, right? You look at inflation kind of affecting there. So I'm thinking obviously like it's gonna be hard because like The one thing that kind of broke me, guys, was that I go to the dollar store to get like candy and stuff like that, but you'll see like families doing their actual grocery shopping at the dollar store.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and that's an unfortunate thing. And it's just processed, unhealthy stuff. Like you can get a can of vegetables, but let's call it spade a spade. Who knows how long that's been on the shelf, right? And just those things you see alone. We're going into Christmas. Being West Indian, a big thing for us is doing like a smoked ham. I've seen the prices of smoked ham that normally I pay like $20 or something like that for a shoulder. They're like $50-$60, right? And it's like, well, what cutbacks can we really do? And Dean, I don't know if it's the same thing in the US. Everybody's sick here in Ontario. You know, like I just got over COVID, and like everybody else that I've seen, like they're just at home, they're just being sick because we don't have that immunity, right? So I like what Jeff kind of always kind of talks about, because when we look into that slow season, we're looking at reverse logistics, right? And that impact that's going to have on trucking and everything like that. And it's I don't know, it's hard to kind of talk about.
Well, Ryan, think about it like this: your 17,000 is what, $400 and something a week in groceries. That's a lot of money. A lot of money, because if you're spending that, you almost have to make $600 or $700 before taxes just to pay for groceries. That's not fuel in your car, insurance, lights, electricity, gas, clothing on your back, miscellaneous, like none of that.
Vacations.
You have to make $700 a week to pay taxes and have a $400 grocery bill. But when you start doing like, you start going, holy shit. So when people start eating less healthy, then what's going to happen? 2 years down the road, our healthcare system is going to be overrun again by overweight, obese. Like it's a cycle, right? It's crazy.
Hey, just going back to our story about nearshoring, I did find an article that was of interest. It didn't have the number that I was looking for about the number of companies increasing their requests for proposals from manufacturing companies, but it's in CSCMP's Supply Chain Quarterly, and it says that over the next 5 years, nearshoring in Mexico will remain high, but labour concerns and security-related risks will persist. So it's a really good article. There's one data point that I thought was fascinating. Is one of the benefits of locating manufacturing in Mexico is its shared land border with the US. Almost 88% of US-bound Mexican imports are transported by road, which I thought was a fascinating data point. I didn't realize it was that high. So to my point earlier, that I think truckload carriers are going to be well positioned to think about how do we get to the border market, because the volumes are somewhat inconsistent southbound to the the bigger markets like Laredo. I could see a lot more volume. I'm already seeing more volume in markets like San Antonio, right? Which is, that's where I see a lot of, again, anecdotal, but when I sit there and watch trucks on the interstate, I see a lot of Mexican carriers running straight into San Antonio. You can tell them because they have the numbers of the fleet number, the truck number is in massive letters on the side, like they're 1 foot high numbers. You can always tell them, and they run. You can see them running into Dallas, Fort Worth, into that market, Jeff, right in the middle there. Grand Prairie, and then you'll see them running into San Antonio, and also you read articles about companies investing in a lot of logistics infrastructure in around those markets for imports that come across the border. So I think that's one of the things I'm seeing change in our database is more volumes in markets like San Antonio that you wouldn't normally have seen historically. And I think, again, I'm trying to connect the dots here, but I think there is something already afoot where we're seeing more volume come in from the southern border. So we're trying to dig into all of our southern border markets right now and go back and historically look at what's been going on up until the pandemic and then post-pandemic to see if there's a nugget of information there we can share.
Beautiful. I look forward to more of that data. Before I forget, everyone, so for everyone watching and listening, December 13th, Tuesday, December 13th, we have our all-day stream, and we're actually going to stream the DAT show through our show. So we're actually really excited about that. And then we've got an all-day stream. We got so many special guests for you guys. So hey, come join us all day if you want. Just take the day off work and join us. That's always good. Yeah, why not? Why wouldn't you? Right? It's December 13th. We're going to do the sales chatter 12 days of Christmas in one day. Hey, Ryan. So we're Ryan, Jeff. We're going to be here all day. We got
we're gonna. I didn't talk to you guys about this behind the stage, but I guess I'll announce it now that we're going to be having a counter for every time that Jeff's internet cuts off. So taking over under bets. I'm saying at least 10 times for that full 8 hours. But it's going to be
Yeah,
jam-packed
okay.
full of amazing guests that are coming on here. And, I watch the Data IQ show every week, and that kind of gets me prepped for the week as well, that you guys always have that show. So to have
Good
it
show.
stream on our show, it's going to bring a new audience. I love, I believe it's Ken and Dean kind of
Canada.
work
Yeah,
together,
yeah.
and I like to see the graphs and all that stuff. So,
Yeah.
you're in for an amazing treat next Tuesday.
Right.
It's gonna
And I'll be
great.
on. I'll be on about what 1:30 Eastern. I'll come in.
Yeah,
for a
1:30 Eastern. We're coming. We're
session.
bringing the Diener back on. Yep, for another cricket
Diener.
session.
Hey,
And we're
so
gonna,
there's actually a tomato named after me, the Diener.
the
It's a
Diener.
thing. Yeah, they've grown. So a professor at Lowell University here in Boston also works in our catering business part time, and her and her partner grow tomatoes in a market garden nearby. And what they did is they developed a new breed of tomato that's it's like a rainbow. It's the weirdest colored tomato. It's all these different colors. Drought resistant to high yield, a whole lot of cool things, but they called it the Diener.
Well, we don't think
after-
you're weird, Dean.
No,
Hey,
I've got some pictures of it. They're really nice, very tasty. But the Diener is a tomato that you might see on your shelves in.
Well, you know what?
Tomato.
Hey, if I saw a Diener on the shelf, I'd get it, brother. Let me tell you that.
Yeah, I hate tomatoes, but I get it.
I get it.
It's like one of those things like seeing like the cotton candy grapes. I don't know if you guys
Yeah.
ever tried it, or the grapple, which is an apple that tastes like a grape. It's just
Right.
it's
Grapple.
kind of cool. Grapple, yeah, we got
It sounds like a wrestling move. The grapple.
it.
It is. Grappling.
It's when they grab you by the handles and they twist you and
I don't know if you can see it, but that's what it looks like.
That's pretty
Oh,
cool.
so that's a big tomato. Tomato.
Yeah.
now does it have
Tomatoes, we'd
flavor?
say.
Because I haven't had
beautiful.
a tomato with flavor
Like
in
a beefsteak.
ages.
Absolutely beautiful. I loved it. I'm not a big tomato fan, or as we'd say in Australia, tomato. They are really, really nice. Just
Well,
beautiful.
I think you have to like it if it's named after you.
Yeah, it's you don't.
Yeah, I do.
It's
Talk
kind
about
of, it's
bias.
kind of, yeah.
Bias.
No, I love it. It's the best thing on the planet. You guys got to try it. Everyone's got to
Yeah,
have
right.
the Dieners.
That's
Right.
it. So the tomato is on at 1:30 on December 3rd.
Oh, Lisa says we have cotton candy grapes in the fridge right now.
They're so good.
Yeah.
They're so good. If you guys haven't tried it, it's so
Oh.
sweet, but it's so good. Like it's pretty pricey too. It's like $5.99 a pound, I think, here in Toronto. So
Cotton candy grapes. So there's a
cotton
grapes
candy grapes,
that
yes,
taste like
grapes that taste like cotton candy. Yeah,
Yeah.
put them in the
Wow.
freezer. Here's a tip
Yeah.
for you guys too. If you guys like grapes, put your grapes in the freezer. I love frozen grapes. I think frozen grapes are probably like the best, most refreshing fruit that you can probably have. But that's just me there. I don't know what's going on.
Nice. Now, do
We
you do
should-
it like when the grapes are getting towards the end of their life, or you just buy them?
No, when we get them, because it's just me and my wife, right? So like it's hard for us. Like if we get a 2-pound grapes, we just throw it in the freezer and then just pick at it at any time. And it's like a frozen grape. So definitely try that out.
That's pretty cool.
I should share the recipe for our meringue, which is we have a Australian dish called a pavlova, and pavlova is a famous Australian dessert, which is like a giant meringue with cream and all fruits on top. So it's it's an infusion of sugar that will send you over the edge. But
Comes with one of these, a diabetic pen.
That's it. Yep.
We might all need that on
Dean's
December
slot,
13th.
like cooking with Dean. I need to see Dean in like an apron. We need to.
Right.
This is really the 12 days. 12 days of
So-
Christmas baking.
so the reason I mentioned it, we've got a Christmas party to go to tomorrow. It's the Australian American Society of having a Christmas party here in Boston, and we have to bring Australian food. So my wife's busy cooking Australian meat pies, sausage rolls. The saying goes, meat pies, sausage rolls, meat pies, kangaroos, and Holden cars. There's actually a song that goes along those lines. We should. So we've got to go there tomorrow night and take a whole bunch of Australian food, and one of those is a meringue, which I will make sure I get a picture of for you.
Yes.
It's,
Please
Yeah.
do. Please do. I would
So-
love to take a look at that.
I'll have to change my to Australian English. It's going to be hard after all these years of speaking American English.
I don't think you'll have a problem, Dean. You'll
Yeah,
go back. You'll go back to.
I just worry the Australian truck driver will turn up. That's what I'm really worried about.
The grumpy
Like,
Dean.
lurking under the shadows, there's this
Yeah.
guy that comes out and says the worst things.
Right. They don't curse though. I heard that was an Australian.
Yeah. They're like the nicest people in the
Oh,
world.
they don't curse at all, man.
They're all
They're
hanging on Bondi Beach.
proper.
Yeah.
They'll always pull up when you're broken down, though. Give you a wave as they go past at 1,000 miles an hour.
With the finger out the window.
Yeah.
Jeff, this is a PG show.
Yeah, I know. It's a
You didn't see that, did you?
No, we didn't see it. It went too fast.
His internet wasn't.
The bird turned into a phoenix and it flew.
It's like Harry Potter broom in the corner there, but should we take it now?
Yeah. Hey guys, can I give a couple of plugs to our show on Tuesday? We've got two very important guests coming up that I think everybody on this show should listen to. And of course, you'll catch it next week live. But Tim DeNoyer from ACT Research is on next Tuesday. ACT Research are the premier company that captures all of the new truck and trailer orders each month from all of the manufacturers. Those numbers are off the charts when you look at how many new trucks and trailers are being ordered. New trucks are coming out, 9 months' time. New trailers are going to come out in 6 months' time. So if you're thinking about when the market's going to turn, it's a really good indicator for where the market thinks capacity is going to start with that inflection point, where the market drops and starts to increase.
Is this companies replacing old equipment, or is this new companies?
These are new truck orders, and the inference is that they will retire aging equipment on their normal trade cycles. So it's very important to watch. And right on cue, Dan's gone. Internet guy.
Dan's
gone. But who's and you said there's another guest on the show as well?
Yeah, so Professor Jason Miller is on the week before Christmas to give us his 2022 year wrap and 2023 outlook. Always a really good show. Love having Professor Miller on our show. So don't forget the next 2 Tuesdays. A couple of really good guests we've got on that'll give you a good insight into what next year's going to shape up like.
That's amazing. That's, and especially I feel like a lot of people are in research. I don't know if you guys are kind of seeing it. Everyone's kind of either on vacation right now or thinking about vacation, right? So it's good to kind of level up your education while we're getting prepared for next year. But
so I didn't pull a Jeff. I actually clicked my no. Okay, internet guy. I actually clicked my thing off because I had a phone call that I had to take. So I apologize. I didn't just pull a Jeff. Just so everyone knows, I want to make that clear.
Right, boys. With that being said,
Jeff,
let's take everybody home.
All right,
hold on.
send
I just have to say. So I said to Jeff the other day. I said, "What's going on with the internet?" He goes, he pulls up a pad and paper. He goes, "I got the name of a guy right here." I'm like, "Good, call him." Ryan, take us out before Jeff.
Let's take us out. Well, thank everybody for coming out this morning on Data Day. Thank you, Dean. Always amazing information and a lot of stuff that we can take back to our own selves as freight brokers, carriers, whatever role we have in the industry. Like Dan said, next Tuesday, we got our 12 Days of Christmas Sales Chatter episode. It's going to be a banger. Definitely catch the replay of this episode at 12 p.m. and 3 p.m. Eastern Time. LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and then we'll see you guys tomorrow. We've got an amazing, I believe Brian Bryro is going to be on tomorrow.
Brian Bryro.
Banger ever episode. So take care, everybody. See you guys tomorrow.
Have a good day.
Centurion Trucking. Our motto is people before profit. Today's market requires more transparency, consistency, and focus on what our clients need to win. Centurion Trucking and American Logistics are poised to help their clients achieve and surpass their targets. If you're looking for a team that honors your needs, dreams, and aspirations, then get a hold of Daman at American Logistics or Centurion Trucking and start designing